often. But first to the acting. Here is some of his work.
Dad, do you miss being a SEAL?
I miss my brothers. The loyalty. Making a difference. But I don't miss saying goodbye to you.
You're going out today.
What?
That's what you wanted, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Work today.
We come from tougher cloth than that.
Weren't you like ex-military or something?
Yeah.
Get up! I get the flowers. What have you heard? He's gonna find some reason to bust you down a rank, cut your pay, transfer you out of Okinawa to some shit assignment in Germany. Jesus.
It's not fair that you get in trouble.
That's right. You should have thought of that before you did what you did.
Hello, Nigel Pierce.
Walt Schmidt.
Nigel's my ex-husband.
A role I relish. I need to catch a plane to London, so you'll have to have Ava for the weekend.
And what if I have plans?
Yes, I can see your plans. I'm the man in control of the small army sitting on your doorstep.
Do you have a moment to chat?
So we first intersected with Matthew Marsden back in December of 2022 when we read that he was one of the very few people in Hollywood who was taking a public stand for freedom and against vax mandates. He came on our nighttime show, and here's part of it.
I didn't become a citizen of this country to have my First Amendment rights and my other rights and things that great Americans have fought for and died for me to have to worry about having to lie about something like having a vaccine. I think it's an invasion of privacy. I don't think it's right. And, you know, we're not exactly storming the beaches here, Tucker. You know, it's just standing up for what you believe is right. And I believe that if more people did it, then they'd have nowhere to go. Then these things would stop and they'd start changing their policies. There has to be a point where people say enough. And because where does it stop? I mean, we all saw that in the lockdowns. Where does it stop? Does it stop, you know, with the masks? Does it stop with locking people in their houses? And now, to me, I think it's just unbelievable that they were saying that you have to inject your body with something that is invasive.
So our view was that's an interesting man, and we wanted to talk with him at much greater length, and so now we are for the hour. Matthew Marsden joins us in studio. Matthew Marsden, sure appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Got a million questions for you, but first, sketch out your life for us, if you would. Where are you from, and how'd you get here?
So I have a funny accent, right? So
I did notice that.
So originally I'm from the UK. Actually, I tell people I'm from Mordor because actually where I'm from is where Tolkien had the inspiration for Mordor.
Really?
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah, it's called West Bromwich.
Yes.
It's a little in the Midlands. It was a very industrial area. So I grew up there. I had a single parent. My mum was kind of a very working class upbringing. Loved movies. Was always inspired by American films. And one of the films that really touched me was actually Rocky. Because I'm like, here's this guy, he's a working class guy, and if he works really hard, he can achieve anything.
Yes.
And that really inspired me because I thought, well, this is all I've got around me, so I better work really hard to get out of it. And so, of course, I chose acting because that's what everybody does.
So growing up in the 70s and 80s in the Midlands, how economically depressed was it?
Oh, it was really bad.
Yeah.
It was really bad. I mean, I had free school meals and, you know, I literally had holes in my shoes when I went to school and things like that. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But we never felt like it was like that. You know, we always felt that we were lucky to have what we had. There was certainly more of a sense of community. There was a real sense of community. I mean, my grandmother, her sister, and my mom all lived on the same street.
Oh, that's pretty great.
Which was amazing. And that was kind of, I guess that was kind of the first inkling I had about having family, like how important family was.
And you were close to them?
Super close. I'd see my grandmother, I'd walk up the street, because I'd literally walk from my house, it curved up like this to get to the bus station, because we didn't have a car. So I'd walk up and I'd see my great aunt and my grandmother every single day on the way to school, on the way back from school.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really quite something.
How'd you get out?
Well, I was really lucky because I had this dream, and it was really from watching American films and reading American comic books and having this dream that I could be somebody if I really worked hard enough. And I guess in my naivety, I didn't realize that that's not what you do in the UK, because certainly for an actor, it's more of what they say, a middle-class career. So you don't really break up into it. But I was probably too dumb to realize that. And I'm like, no, I'm going to do that. I'm good at it. I was very good at learning lines. I could memorize things. I was an avid reader. And so I thought, that's where I'm going to be eventually. It's funny because coming here to Florida, by the way, it was a dream to me to come to Florida. I never ever thought that I'd ever make it to come to Florida. Yeah, it's true. I was like,
Really?
This is Florida. It's like the blue chip place where people go and there's like Disney World. And if I really work hard, I can go to Disney World. Like I can make it if I've gone there. Seriously. And so I worked really hard at it. I went to the same college that Tolkien went to, which is St. Philip's Sixth Form College, right next to the oratory where Newman was. There was the London Oratory and then there was the Birmingham Oratory. So that I went to that college. And then I got into something called the National Youth Theatre, which is the kind of standard for great actors in England, for young great actors. If you can get in there, Helen Mirren, Derek Jacobi, all these amazing actors went through there. And that kind of was the thing that helped me push on. Otherwise, I don't think a lot of those doors would have opened for me to get into acting. And, my mum was amazing. She said, you go and follow whatever you want to do. Nobody in my college had ever, in my family had ever been to college. I was the first one to go to college. And I did a really useful degree called the Performing Arts degree, which of course is...
Turned out to be useful.
Yeah, well, it did. I'm actually probably one of the only ones that actually used it afterwards. Yes. Yeah. So I paid my way through college. I did some modelling to get my way through that because that's the only... my mum couldn't support me, so I had to do it myself. And then I got into a television show in the UK called Emmerdale, and then the next audition I got was...
Which was a big deal television show.
It was a very big one, and then the next one was even bigger. It was Coronation Street, and that was it. That just completely...
How old were you?
I think I was 26.
So your first show was a hit show?
It was a massive show. Like it's like there were two soap operas, but Coronation Street is... The Queen used to sit and watch Coronation Street, like with the Queen Mum. She'd sit down at... Yeah, they'd sit down and watch it. And everyone from Elton John, and it is a very, very cult TV show. Ian McKellen's been on it, Joan Wally Kilmer's been on it, Ben Kingsley's been on it.
Wow.
So it's a really... And I won within the first few months. I got the Best Newcomer Award at the National Television Awards.
So effectively, you're an immediate success in this business.
Yeah.
Did that screw you up?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course it did.
Yeah. I totally wasn't prepared for it.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm an actor, I'm going to go and do my job, and what's all this chaos that comes with it? And growing up in a secular society, that can really mess with your head because you're told, like, this is the way you should behave as an actor. Whether it's, I wouldn't say like completely hedonistic, but it's certainly like, get your money, go out and date people. And it always rubbed against the grain with me. It was always something that I felt uncomfortable with. And I just wanted to find more. Then I went on and had a music career. I signed with Columbia Records because as I was growing up, I never figured that I'd make it. I wanted to, but it was such a long shot. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to make it, and I can't dance, right? So I better be able to just sing, because then it increases. I can do musicals. I can do more things. And then I came out of the show and had a music career with Columbia Records and sang with Beyonce, which was kind of... You
sang with Beyonce?
Yeah. Yeah, they actually did my backing vocals, which is kind of...
What was she like?
Back then, I think she was 17, like super sweet, like not the person that you saw years later. She was a good Christian girl. They were going to go to Germany at the time. I remember I was in the studio with them and they were like, they'd never been to Germany and they were freaked out the fact that they had... I said, you can have like a smorgasbord in the morning, they're going to come out and you can eat meat for breakfast. Like, and they were like, what? And I'm like, oh yeah. And she was, just massively talented, like just super talented. And I was like, she's going to be a huge star. She's going to be, You called that right. Yeah. But it was evident when when you're around her.
So you said, you just said that you see a big change between the person you knew at 17 and the woman you see on TV now.
Yeah.
So, and you took it as kind of a matter of course. That's what happens to people.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, why?
I think there's multiple reasons. I think that when you get into that world, you're told that this is the way you live your life, and it's very, very difficult to push against that. Because you push against it and then all of a sudden you're isolated and you're not part of the crowd and you don't get invited to these things. And then once you start getting isolated like that, it's just a very uncomfortable place to be. And you have to have a real basis in something that is bigger than you, I think.
Yes.
And what really matters in life. Because, like I said, when I met her, she was this young girl. They'd already had success with Destiny's Child, but not like the massive, massive success. Very, very innocent girls. They were very innocent. And, I can only talk, having been grown up in a secular society, to come to America, to change the way I'm living my life, to see the way that Americans, and I mean Americans, like you cut off those two edges really, and like Americans live their lives. And see that there's something fundamentally good about it, and that it is possible for you to live the life that way. And a lot of people, and people don't realize it who do live the life that way, is that there's a whole world that doesn't understand that, and they don't understand that you can live your life in line with natural law, and it's much better for you like that, and it makes you a lot happier to be that way. Because if you're told that this is all it is, right, and being famous and being rich and getting cars and all that is what matters, then, okay, you're going to live your life that way. And ultimately, most people end up miserable. That's why you look at most, the children of very famous people and normally always messed up.
Yeah.
So to me, to come to America and then to know that that is a possibility and to actually start living that way and actually become more and more happy living that way where the other things don't matter so much, was really amazing, and it's a miracle, because this is the only country in the world that you can do that.
Yeah.
It really is. It's the only country and that's why in the end I spoke up, because this country is worth fighting for with everything that you have. The idea that this country was found on is worth giving everything for, because it's in line with natural law, which is in line with God, and that goes and it's over. And I think it's really important for people to understand that. So, going back to her and actors, and it's a very small, like little bubbled world that they live in. They all get the same parties. They're all in the same,
How controlled, this is a whole separate conversation, but I have to ask, how controlled is that world by the agents and managers and executives?
Oh, yeah. It's super controlled by that.
It is?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You go to, for example, you go to a party and you'll meet the person that was casting a movie earlier on that day, and you see them at the party and they're like, okay, well, you're in the group, so... And all those deals are done there. They're not, the amount of times people go in, very rarely you can go in and audition for a film and get it. It's such a close... That's why you see the same people in all the same films.
With the same views.
With the same... Yeah. That's what it is. And so my whole take on actors, by the way, so the way I came up through the ranks was I had to work hard, right? So if you think about in England, I did a drama degree. I'd already got an A-level in theatre. I'd already done drama at school. Then I went and did National Youth Theatre. Then I went and did my degree. I didn't finish it because I came out to get work, because an acting degree, I'm like, it's not really going to get me in anywhere else, right?
Yes.
If I'm like, so I'm like, I've got work, I'm going to go do it. So there's a filter. So I had to work all the way through. So by the time I went to my first audition, I'd already done like 6 years of training. And so a lot of big directors, they don't, what the big directors want you to do is they want you to hit your mark, say your words, as a meat puppet, and get out of the way, right? They want you to just do that. Now, the miracle of the United States is that I can walk off the streets and have no training.
That's true.
And become a massive star. Right? No training. It's
Happens
great.
all the time.
It's great, but it's also really damaging, because you come off, you haven't got any basis in anything, you haven't worked at anything. So guess what? You're all of a sudden, last week you were nobody, like working at Chuck E. Cheese. And this week you're making $10 million and being flown around in a private jet and everyone tells you're the greatest person in the world. So guess what? You don't feel necessarily that you earned it. So that makes you feel like pretty badly for the people that are still like, chugging along the way. So then their way, this is just my theory, their way of compensating for that is they feel massively guilty, so they have to go and pander to these different groups. So with me, I'm like, I don't pander to them because I work really hard. Every single thing I've got to work for myself, so I don't care. That's not interesting to me. I think if there's a group that genuinely need help, then of course, as a Christian, I want to do that. But I don't feel for the other like agenda groups. That's no concern of mine.
So working for what you have instills a self-confidence and roots you in something.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get, so you studied to be an actor, you're from working class beginnings, you spend 6 years in school, your first show's a hit show, followed by a second hit show, then you get a record deal, and Beyonce's your backup singer.
Yeah.
But you still want to see Florida. How do you get from there to here?
Well, I always loved America, right? I always loved America. It's like, to me, I know this might seem a silly thing. I got one of those comic books, like Archie comic books, years ago, and I looked in the back. I always remember looking in the back of the comic book, and it was like X-ray specs.
Yes.
And sea monkeys. I'm like, what are these? Like, you get sea monkeys.
Sea monkeys.
What is a sea monkey?
I never got that. I always wanted them.
Right? And I'm like, this is amazing. And it was just a silly thing like that. And those lifesavers, those little, like the candies and all these different things that you could get in America that we couldn't get over in England. And I used to watch the Dukes of Hazzard, and I loved that car, fell in love with that car, the General Lee and Knight Rider, and all these other things that really, it's kind of like formed me as a young man, because I'd watch TV a lot. I'd watch a lot of it, and actually it gave, this is why media is so important, and it's a really important export around the world, because it teaches a lot of people what this country is all about. And in the 80s, we were really fortunate to have a lot of positive things that say, you can achieve something. So I go through, I do all my training, and then I get a film with Michael Caine called Shiner, and he was up for an Oscar for Side House Rules at the same time. So I go into that movie, everyone's looking, who's this kid, like, working with Michael Caine and blah, blah, blah. So, and I was auditioning for Star Wars at that time as well. I was on the shortlist for Star Wars, and it was funny because you used to have to like film yourself on a mini DV, those little.
Yeah, very well.
But then what you do is you film yourself. You couldn't edit it, right? Not like now. Like if you got on iMovie, you can just go and edit it and send it off. Then you had to put it in a package and send it over to New York by FedEx. And if you missed the time, you were out of luck. And so that's what happened to me. So anyway, I missed sending my last taping over for Star Wars, but the casting director was talking to a bunch of people in Hollywood about me. And so I had managers fly over. And this is all dream. This is all like, this doesn't happen. Like, it's happening to me. And a manager flew over, and I got on really well with her. And she said, I want you to come to America. Because I never wanted to come to America and be a bum. I wanted to come to America and to be a net positive.
Smart.
So I said...
So you're not coming until you have a job?
And I can give something. There's something that I can give that no one else can give to the United States at that point. So I come over and I get Black Hawk Down.
Amazing.
And that was it. And I'm like, I remember getting the phone call. I got a phone call. It's like 12 o'clock at night. And you got to understand, like, Hollywood, it's a movie with Jerry Bruckheimer and Ridley Scott, and I'm going to do this movie about the Army Rangers. And I remember I went and I got a bottle of champagne that I'd kept, and I went and woke my mum up at midnight. It was like 12:30, and I just said, I've done it. I'm there. I've done it. And she gave me a big hug. Wow. And that was it. And I moved across to America, and it was, and that was the beginning of me. So then the next stage was like, why is this country so great? Like, who are these Army Rangers that are willing? So I was we went training Fort Benning. I know nothing about the Army Rangers. We were training Fort Benning, and we were doing close quarter combat, you know, going in room clearance and all that. And I sat outside and I'm doing my actor thing. I'm like, so, why did you join the military? Right, asking all these questions. This young, like 21-year-old kid. We're outside, like sitting under a tree, waiting for our time to go. And he said, for freedom. I was like, I'd never heard that before. Because in Europe, it's mocked. Freedom fries, America, freedom, freedom, freedom. I look at this guy, and this is a kid that is going to go out and fight. And I said, you'd die for me, wouldn't you? And he said, yes, sir. And I was like, this is the greatest country in the world, and I want to know everything about it. And that was it. And that's when I started reading about the Founding Fathers and the Constitution. Never been taught anything about the war. I'm like, the Brits were kind of the bad guys, and I'd be on the other side.
You hadn't learned that growing up in England.
Yeah, well, they don't kind of talk about the ones that we lost. So I started reading about it. I'm like, these people, this is unbelievable that this group of people were together at this point in time. But this has to be, and this has to be something bigger. There has to be something bigger going on for all these people to come together and enshrine these things and stand up against the greatest empire that has ever been. It takes massive courage. And I'm like, I want to know more about this. Because why is America so different to everywhere else? I've been all over the world. Like, why is this place so different? I want in on that. I knew I loved it. I didn't know why. And I think part of it is because, again, the Founding Fathers were in line with natural law, which obviously appeals to us in our souls. So I didn't know that then. I didn't know that's what that was. You know, that the alignment with God. And why was everything so different here? And why do these other issues mean something here? And they're already dismissed back in Europe. And that was I had to figure it out, right? I needed to find out, because as an actor, you should be pursuing the truth all the time, whether it be stories with, you know, your character, is it true what he would do? Is it? And so to me, that was just an extension of that, is finding out what the truth is about this country, because I'd heard a whole lot, and none of it was true that I'd heard over there.
So you're saying, before we get to your personal progression, but
yeah,
you just said something, I think you said, that even people who aren't religious, who don't think that they're people of faith,
yeah,
respond to what you describe as natural law positively. It feels good. This is inherent, this code.
Yeah.
It's in all of us. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it is. And because I think why do we feel good giving when it's something that you shouldn't?
Right.
It's an active, like, net loss when you give. So why do you feel good about it? Why don't you go, yeah, I made all
That's
this
not
money,
evolutionary biology right there, is it?
No, it's not. It's completely counterintuitive. So,
so what's the answer? Why do we feel? Because you're right. Everyone feels good about that.
Yeah,
Why?
because we have a soul. We have an immortal soul, and it's connected to something that is bigger than us. And I think that when you come to, and again, that's another thing. So when I'm on this, looking into the Founding Fathers, I'm reading, I got given The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. I'm like, wow, Jesus is real? And, oh, hang on a minute, I've got to figure this out.
Wait, someone gave you that book?
Yeah, an actress actually gave it me, Joy Lenz, Bethany Joy Lenz, who was on One Tree Hill. We did a pilot, and she knocked on my door one night, and she said, I want you to read this. And I read it, I put it down, like literally put it down. I'm like, okay. It had been explained to me before, like, I grew up Catholic, I went to Mass, I was an altar boy, but I wasn't, like, there was no formation, but after I read Lee Strobel, I'm like, okay, again, it's pursuing the truth, right? Like, I've got to follow this. And you have to follow it wherever it's going to go, right? You have to, because the truth is the truth. And not this, like, the one thing that drives me crazy is your truth might, it's just one of the worst phrases ever in the history of the world. Your truth. No, there's the truth. So I'm reading this, and then I find out, I discover Aquinas, and it's all over. The uncaused first cause, I felt betrayed actually when I found that. I'm like, I can't believe that this, you can tangibly know by reason that there's a God. And so I think that, and to me what it did was all the things that I was kind of pushing up against, like the world was telling me that this is the way I should live my life. And inside I was like, this doesn't feel right to me. It's not right, it doesn't feel right. All of a sudden it was like, you know, everything goes and everything comes in line. And you're like, oh, hang on a minute, this is all aligned. Like everything now feels right. Everything now, there feels like less of a resistance, whether it be in my career or whether it be in my personal life or anything like that. And it doesn't mean that it's not without difficulty. People think, one of the biggest mistakes that and you know...
Yeah, because it's hard to see how it's helped your career.
No, no, it doesn't, but...
and I mean that as a compliment.
No, it is, it's great, right? I mean, look, at the end of the day, you know, people on my deathbed are not going to look and say, well, Matt made a lot of movies. I think that would be the worst thing ever for someone to say to me. I think that I'd like them to say that I was a good man and that I was a good father and a good husband. And that is what you realize as you get older, right? That's all that matters.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you realized it young. So how old were you when you got this book, and what happened to the woman who gave it to you?
Well, Joy is a really interesting story because she actually went away from the faith and then came back to church with me once. She called me up, and since then I've been married and got kids, and she said, can I come with you to church? Which was really quite some really moving thing.
Amazing.
Actually. Yeah. It was
Were you
really
in the US when this happened?
Yeah. It wouldn't have happened if it wasn't here. There's no way. There's no way. I wouldn't have been able to talk to people and for them to not look at me like I was a maniac.
Yeah.
And you know.
So it's that much more secular in the UK.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Lack of education, lack of communication. It's this kind of like, and again, it's when people say, "Oh, separation of church and state." That's, you know, it's obvious garbage, right? But it's this thing that science and faith are completely exclusive to each other, right? It's
That's
not
right.
true. It's a really relatively new phenomenon, and I think that wherever you see the state still has it. It still has this combination where you can live your faith and it means something, and you can be seen as someone virtuous to do that. Over there, you're seen as a wacko, like that you're somehow a science denier and you don't believe in this and you don't believe in that. It's not true. It's absolutely not true.
So I don't want to drag you into contemporary British politics, but I do want to throw this on the screen since you grew up in this country, in that country. This is apparently a completely authentic video of a woman being arrested for praying in the UK. You probably have seen it. Here it is.
What are you here for today?
Physically, I'm just standing here.
Okay. Why here of all places? I know you don't live nearby.
But this is an abortion centre.
Are you praying?
I might be praying in my head out loud.
So I'll ask you once more, will you voluntarily come with us now to the police station for me to ask you some questions about today and other days where there are allegations that you've broken public spaces protection order?
If I've got a choice, then no.
Okay, well then you're under arrest on suspicion of failing to comply with the public spaces protection order.
I've seen murders that upset me less than that. There's something about that. I'm praying in my head, okay, you're under arrest. What is that? How could that happen?
Well, I think that, firstly, I mean, look, growing up for me, which is really strange, like we would pray at school, and it wasn't a private school, it was a public school. We'd pray, we'd sing hymns. So my generation, I think, like Generation X is kind of like the last generation to come up with that, with like some semblance of God in their life. As
yes.
Whether or not they believe it or not, they know that it's not a threat because they've been around it. Even a lot of my friends now, oddly enough, a lot of my friends were all working class kids, are all conservatives. Very rarely are they, which is kind of weird, right? Because we're meant to be the ones that vote for Labour.
It's flipped.
Yeah.
In this country as well, as you know.
Yeah.
Since you live in Texas.
Yeah.
You know?
But that is, I think, I hate to say it, but if that was a Muslim, they would not have done that.
Of course not. So what is it about Christianity that they hate so much?
I think that it's the left. Look, if you say that you are in line with natural law, there's a lot of things that go along with that, right? including marriage, all those other things. And they cannot offend the woke at all in any way, shape or form. And that is offensive to them because we've got to the point where that's like group, you can't even have a thought.
But Islam is, as in some sense, more socially conservative than Christianity, but they're endlessly tolerant of that. Could it be that Christianity is true and that's what they hate about it?
I think it's, a lot of it is this guilt about that. Again, you need to be taught correct history, right? If you don't know history, then you're in a lot of trouble. And they don't teach that. Like, it's the same thing with the reparations. Like, you're going to come for Brits reparations when actually they spent billions of dollars going out on the high seas to stop slavery. Yeah. But no, you're the bad guys. The white people in England are bad. It's not true. It's not true. And like I said, they talk to me about white privilege. Tell me, I got white privilege. I grew up with a single mom, in a working-class relationship with beer mats in the bottom of my shoes. Like, I'm sorry, you're not going to put that on me.
Subsidized lunches, yeah,
I'm not
going to.
Same with the racism thing. It doesn't work with me because the guys that I grew up with that were black were the same as me. They were just as poor, and there were rich black guys that were out there that were in the next social tier to me. It was more of a social. A social strata class system. Of course. Whereas, which is amazing about America. Like, I grew up loving black music here. Like, that was everyone else from my area, because Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, all those guys Black Sabbath, they're all from my area. And I love.
They're all from the Midlands?
Yeah. Well, Judas Priest lived across the street from my mom. Ozzy Osbourne's from Aston, which is right round the corner. I don't know why. It's probably because it was Mordor and it was so grim that breaking the law. But for me, it was all. I loved Motown. When I first heard Motown, so when I came here, like, that to me was so inspiring, and I didn't see any difference. I didn't see a color difference. George Benson, Marvin Gaye, all those people were real inspirations to me. And so, when, especially on social media, which you really shouldn't get involved in, right? But when they level the accusation of racist, I'm like, it doesn't affect me. You can't call me that because I know who I am. Of course. So say it. Because sometimes they'll say, because I wasn't down with Black Lives Matter, right? Because they're a Marxist organisation that want to destroy the family. So I was like, I'm not down with it. And even some people back home, because of the stuff that they were told, because the media is just completely one-sided. People don't really realise that. Thank God for Fox News here, because there's nothing over there. GB News is now doing it, but there's no real other side. To me, people are like, well, we know why you're against BLM. I'm like, say it. Call me. Say it. Tell me I'm a racist. Tell me. Because that's what they want to smear you with. Yeah. And they can't do it with me because I'm not. So they can try all they want. I know I'm right. And I know this is one of the reasons why I spoke up, is like, when I die, my kids are going to look at me and I hope that they'll say my dad was a good man and he stood up for the things that are right. And I know I've got a lot of stuff to make up for in my life. And you never know when you're going to go, right?
Well, you never know. That is true. So you mentioned your kids. I've been wanting to get to that for the last half an hour. Who's your wife? Where'd you meet her?
So my wife is, her name is Nadine, and she met her in Malta. She's Maltese.
In Malta?
Yeah.
What were you doing in Malta?
I was doing it's like a two-part TV show, it was really a movie, but they split up into two parts, called Helen of Troy. And I met her there, and I was not looking for it. I was like, I need a break. I need to be single for a while. I actually thought, I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I'm never going to meet anyone. I was like 28, and I'm like, my life is over. I'm never going to meet anyone.
You met her in Malta?
Yeah.
I'm not even sure most Americans know what Malta is.
Right, so there's Italy, it comes down like that, and then there's Sicily, and then there's Malta, which is a teeny tiny island. Which, if you never read about the Great Siege of Malta, it's one of the great things ever. It makes you look and you go, well, who am I not to stand up being an actor when these guys fought against, like, they kept, the Turks from rampaging across Europe, and we're going to complain.
Oh, they stopped the Muslim invasion of Christian Europe. Oh, that's pretty unusual. So you meet her in Malta.
Yeah.
You get married and then bring her back to Los Angeles?
Yeah. and again, we're both on, Malta's a Catholic country, so she had a
Yes.
lot better faith formation than me, but we were both, learning at the same time, coming together, and then, like I said, one of the first things that we said when we got married was, we got to be open to life. Like, this is something that's really important, that we don't want, as I was saying earlier, that a lot of people don't realize this about birth control, is that it is a block in between two people a lot of the times. And what I found was, and this is just, I know this might be a little bit off topic, but it's
fascinating. Because this is one of those things, I'll speak as a Protestant American, you never, in this country, never even think about it.
Yeah.
So I'm very open to new ways of thinking about it.
All right, so here's the take on it, is that when you're with your wife, and if you have sex with your wife, and you're open to life, you're committing to that. Like, so the man is saying, I'm giving everything to you. I'm committing to you that if you have a child, I'm here. I'm going to be here I know some people aren't, and then the wife is saying, I'm willing to have a child and have my body ravaged for 9 months and everything that comes with that.
Yes.
And so every single time that happens, it means something more. So you're not holding anything back, and it just cements the relationship on such a fundamental level. It doesn't mean that you don't have any other issues, like everybody does, but that actual thing is a constant commitment to your partner, which is, like I said, if you're going to follow the truth, you have to follow it wherever it leads, and it doesn't mean it's easy, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to have difficulties you got to overcome, and things that you never could comprehend, like never getting a good night's sleep ever again because you got a 4-year-old's foot in your face every night.
So did you wind up having children?
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been waiting for the punchline.
Yeah.
How many children do you have, Mr. Marsden?
I have 1 child from a previous relationship, and I have 7 with my wife and 1 on the way.
So you're about to have your 9th.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to break character as the interviewer and just say I admire that more than anything, and I'm grateful to be in the presence of a man with children.
Well, it's my
love that.
wife. It's my wife. So she is a saint. She is the greatest human being on the planet.
That's just, it's amazing and wonderful. Did you anticipate this?
Nope.
How many siblings do you have?
1.
1.
Yeah.
So you grew up in a traditional, even though it was in the Midlands, kind of a California family.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1 parent, 1 sibling.
Yeah.
Been there.
Yeah.
How did this happen? Was it intentional?
No, like I said, I said I wanted to be open to life. If I'm going to follow my faith, I've got to follow it. And there's a lot of stuff that I don't understand.
Yes. Me too.
But there was a lot of stuff that I didn't understand before that now I understand, that I know is right. So I'm taking it on. I'm taking on good faith that all this stuff is right as well. And I have to say, like, it's in California, we get horrible, horrible comments all the time.
Horrible comments?
Oh my goodness me. Oh yeah.
From whom?
Oh, from just random people. They call my wife selfish. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So listen to this.
How could you look at a gaggle of children like that and feel anything but admiration and joy?
People.
It's really dark. It's so dark. Oh.
So listen to this. So one night, so a woman passed my house one day, and she was part of like the neighborhood. Now I don't know if she was the person that did it, but she saw the kids playing. Like there was like 4. And she was like, "Oh, you got a big family." I'm like, "Well, you haven't seen all of them. Like, wait till you see the others." And another friend of mine came to my house that they had a bunch of kids, and she comes in, she's holding this book. And I'm like, "What's that?" And she said, "Oh, no, this was on your, propped up against your door." And there was a whole section in the book on population control that someone had left on my doorstep.
Can you imagine?
And that was part of the beginning of like, I don't want to be here anymore.
No, it's totally demonic. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
That's what I think, and I know that to be true. So, wow, I'm sorry. But what is life like? I mean, the upside is you get to live in this world that is very different from the world most people live in. What's it like?
Amazing, actually. I mean, I'm not going to say it's easy.
No.
You know, I've aged.
I don't think anyone imagines. I don't think anyone's thinking, really, it's not easy.
The great thing is when I get to a hotel, I'm like, oh, I get to get more than 4 hours sleep. This is awesome. But then I always wake up at the same time anyway and miss my kids. So it's like, be careful what you wish for. But one of the things that it has taught me, which I think is, well, there's a couple of things. The first thing is, you can't be selfish. Your kids cannot be selfish in a household that big. They have to share. They have to pull their own weight. They know that they're not the little special child because everyone's equal. So that puts a sense of humility in them. They also all know how to change a diaper. They all know how to look out. My 16-year-old can walk around with a little baby. I mean, we can totally leave him. And all the others, by the way.
Is that your oldest one at home?
He's the oldest one at home, yeah. And he can totally do everything that... He's totally dialed in. But then the other thing that really taught me, because when you come from one of like two siblings, especially if one's a female, that, okay, well, I don't really... She's like that because she's a girl, right? And I'm a boy. You don't really look at the kind of prism of characteristics that come to make a human being. So when you look at 7 kids and they all have the same parents, they're all raised in the same environment and they're all different. They all have their own little character traits. You learn so much about yourself and how you have to work with them. And that it's certainly helped me in the way I approach other people. I don't say I'm not as judgmental, but I have more patience with people's idiosyncrasies, because I look and I'm like, oh, well, that's like Sawyer. And he's a little bit sensitive, but he's a tough kid, but he's, he wants to please his dad. My 16-year-old Finn, he's like unbreakable, like a complete leader, absolute alpha, but, studious, he's amazing. Like, all my kids have these different qualities, and it's really helped me become a better person, I think. I've got a long way to go, but...
what's it like watching them interact with each other?
Sometimes I want to just get out the house.
Yeah.
No, but it's amazing, like, to see them, how much they love each other, and to see how happy they are, like, to go to a game, to watch, we all used to go and watch my son swim. And for them to be excited for him and to be happy for him, it's such a blessing. It's one of those things, because people go, you got 7 kids. I'm like, it didn't all happen at once, right? They didn't all like drop down in 1 minute.
Right.
Like it's a gradual thing. So I can only say that it's a net positive. And if more people did it, the world would be a lot better place, because people say, oh, well, you can do it because you're an actor. That's got nothing to do with it. Money's got nothing to do with it. The majority of people that say that, you got to have a lot of money to do it. It's not true. Like, these are people that have 2 cars and 4 televisions and, all these other things.
Well, the majority of people I've met who have 7 kids are not rich at all.
No.
Actually.
No, you can't be.
Yeah, well, that's...
You want to feed that many kids?
You can't. No, well, of course, that's true. It's totally true. No, but I mean, rich people who I've spent a lot of time around don't have 7 kids. They just don't. Elon Musk does, but...
Yeah.
But in general, there's quite a bit of social pressure the higher you ascend socially not to have 7 kids.
Yeah.
Like, there's, as you just said, there's hostility toward you. You lived in an affluent neighborhood in California, and people were hostile. Yeah. Why?
I don't know. I don't know if it's because they look and... The one thing I can say about it is it's a really good example of you living your faith, because there's no getting away from it, right? There's no... You can't move away and go, oh, well, they have it easy. No, there's no part of it that's easy. So I do get a lot, especially in Texas. In Texas, when I moved to Texas, totally different thing. Like,
really?
People love it. Oh, my goodness.
So the regions are that different?
Oh, yeah.
In your experience?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's another thing. I realized when I moved to Texas and I'll be talking about politics to a friend of mine, I drop my voice. What am I doing? Like, this is not right. Right. I'm in a restaurant and I'm like, oh, no, actually, I'm in Texas. I can talk about that. I can say that. But yeah, no, it's very, very, very different. My wife once, she was in IKEA and she had to take one of the kids. So she's walking up my thing. She's got 4 kids because we have a big van, right? Because that's
of course you do.
Yeah. And she was taking some of the kids into the bathroom, and this woman was like, "Are these all yours?" And it's like they have no filters just to come out. It's a really weird thing. If someone followed us in California for a week, you'd be just blown away by the comments. They'd say, "Are these all yours?" And she'd be like, "Yeah." And my wife went into the bathroom. This woman didn't know that my son, my 16-year-old, was standing outside. And as her husband came out the bathroom, she was like, "There's a woman, you wouldn't believe it. She's got 5 kids. They are so selfish." I'm like, selfish?
Who's calling who selfish here?
It's unbelievable though, right? I'm like,
the lack of self-awareness is... Right. Well, they always accuse you of being exactly what they themselves are. That's right. Every single time.
Yeah.
That you're selfish for having too many children. So your wife, so you meet her in Malta.
Yeah.
You're this actor.
Yeah.
And she leaves Malta with an actor. You take her to California and then Texas. And then now the 8th child is on the way. What does she, I mean, her life is really taking some turns. What does she think of all this?
Well, it's funny. I was just saying, I was driving down and I was like, "I love Florida." She's like, "We're not moving again." I was like, "It's really great." She's like, "No, we're not leaving our friends. It's not happening. We're not going again."
Fair. I'm on her side. I think that.
And normally it's when she's pregnant. She's like, "We're moving again when I'm pregnant." Like, I'm like, "Well, you are pregnant all the time, to be fair. So I can't like."
Amazing. So it does, when you came on our nighttime show and we did this interview about the vax mandates, I was very impressed by your bravery and also by your ability to explain your views, which is a rare combination. But I didn't realize the stakes were quite as high for you as they were. So you're jeopardizing your career when you have a lot of children to take care of, a lot. And your wife is pregnant and you're doing this anyway. So that's actually a little bit more impressive even than I realized at the time. How hard a decision was it for you?
I've worked a lot with soldiers.
Yes.
And it's really difficult to say that me losing my career is a difficult decision to stand up for what is right when they'll go over and they'll die and they'll lose everything. So to me, it wasn't at all. I mean, I'd be very cowardly if I didn't. And I think that, I mean, I'm not a gigantic, huge actor, I've had a great career, but all that doesn't mean anything if our freedoms are taken away completely.
I agree with that.
And if I can just have a little bit of an effect, if I can nudge a few people to stand up, because one of the things that people don't realize is this is all happening because we're letting it happen.
Yes.
And we say, "Well, it's easy for you." No, it's not. It's not. Don't think about, and you know this, it doesn't matter who you are, they'll come after you.
Oh, yeah.
The Borg will come after you, whoever you are, and they're relentless. So what people have to understand is that they are a minority, they're not the majority. And if more people stood up and said something, then this would all stop. And we are this great country, which is the last best hope for the world. For the world, it's not just about this country, it's about the whole world. I know because I saw it. I know because I was there dreaming of coming here. I'm that guy. And to me, and it's still that, and it's not even as great as what it was. This is the crazy thing. It's still better than anything else that's there. But we can, if we go back to the things that this country was founded on, we can have that again, and then that will spread around the world. Like cancer spreads, and it's evil, good spreads as well. So we can do that. So if we stand up and say, "No, America isn't this bad place you keep saying it is. It's not. It's a very good place." Has it done things before? Yeah, but it's rectified it. That's an amazing thing. I mean, how many other places in the world can you say they had segregation and then it was fixed? I mean, it's unbelievable. And I truly believe that, I know that my kids have all got a head start on 99% of people in the world because they were born here. And I think that is something worth fighting for. And I don't want to give my children a worse world than what I came into. And I think that is the most important thing. And if I die penniless, I'll die with a clean conscience.
Amen. Which is worth more than anything. What was the reaction like in your community of actors and agents in the movie world, in the acting business, when you decided, no, I'm not going to bow to the vax mandates?
Well, there's a lot of them that I had a few people contact me and go, hey, dude, you know, that's awesome. You keep going. I'm like, yeah, while you're taking the fake vaccine and making a lot of money. How about you stand? I didn't say that to them because that's their own, they've got to come to that conclusion themselves. It's frustrating, you know, when the frustrating thing is when you have worked your whole life, like as an actor, you have a resume, right? And you're not meant to make less or do less or worse work as you move through.
No, that's right.
Especially because I didn't go off and do drugs and do all these other things, or, you know, go off and do Harvey Weinstein. That didn't happen. So you kind of go, okay, if that happens, but that was just taken away from me. So it's frustrating for me. I have a lot of people that contact me and say, you know, good on you. You know, well done, you stand up. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Like, if I was on the left and I did this, my phone would be ringing off the hook
Of
tomorrow
course.
with work.
A prisoner of conscience, of course.
You know, and that's one of the difficulties, that we don't look after our own. And you know, I moved more and more. It's kind of funny, like, the more you see the way someone else is, the less you want to be like them sometimes.
Yes.
So that was a motivating factor for me to become more conservative, because I'm like, I know I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. So what's the alternative? And so it's a bunch of other forces that have pushed me that way. And by the way, I don't care about anyone else on when we work. They can believe what they believe. They can do what they want. You know, God forbid, you know, people just let them do what they want to do. But they came into my life and people started coming into, I would never have said anything about the vax. I would never said anything. I would just kept until they just wouldn't leave us alone. They would not leave us alone.
They never stop.
It's just relentless. And I'm like, you know what? It's the least I can do. I was a guest in this country. This country welcomed me. It gave me everything. Who am I not to stand up for what it means for others to come after?
It's just a little pathetic that it took a foreigner, a naturalized American, to stand up for America's core promise. A little bit pathetic.
Well, I think that...
As an American, I can say that. You know, why did it take some Brit to show up and do this? Like, where are people?
I think that people don't understand what a miracle this place is.
I think that's true.
They don't get it. Like, the fact that you have an election, that people aren't getting killed out in the streets, all these other things. And look, it's not like I come from, like, Venezuela.
Right.
I come from England, but still, even there...
Which is, I don't know, not that much freer than Venezuela, to be honest. If they're arresting people for praying in front of abortion clinics, I'm not sure I see the difference.
No, the way it's going now is it's completely lost.
Yeah.
And that's tragic. But yeah, for me, I was like, okay, there's nowhere else to go, right? I went from there to America, which was California. I went from California to Texas. There's nowhere else to go. There's no running. People have got to understand you can't go anywhere else. This is it. Like, this is it. You're not, there's not, you know, the Puritans, they're going to leave England, they're going to find a new world. It's done. This is it. And the idea of America is so amazing. And a lot of people don't know. They don't take the time. So look, one of the things that drives me crazy is when you go to a country, so many people impress their beliefs and way of life into that country, right? They're like, no, you should bend to me. And I approach it the same way I approach acting. I don't go into a role and say, I can't deal with this role, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend the role to me, right? I say, I'm going to
rewrite the novel on which it's based.
Which is happening all the time, right? So when I came here, I'm like, I need to know everything about this. I need to know, like, I don't get the Second Amendment. I don't understand it. Like, what's this? So I read about it. I'm like, oh, hang on a minute. There's a First Amendment. And if you don't have a Second Amendment, then you don't have a First Amendment.
Exactly.
Oh, it's kind of genius. And then so I'm like, okay, even though initially I'm uncomfortable around guns, I've got to get comfortable around guns, because you know what? That's what it means to be a man. You have to defend your family, and you have to understand that this is what this country is based upon. It's not like, it's a right. It's a God-given right. It's not an option. It's a right. So, okay, when in Rome, I've got to get it together. I've got to figure this out.
Did you?
Yeah.
What'd you think?
I think it's the greatest thing ever.
Do you ever shoot?
Yeah. all the time. I just got another gun. Like, my buddy bought me a gun for Christmas. I'm like, I love it. But people don't, like, people are back in the UK, like, why do you need a gun? Do you need to be a man? I'm like, it's not about that. Even if it was, it's not about that.
Yeah. But also, if it was about that, what's wrong with that?
It doesn't matter.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, defending
you need
my
to be a man?
kids.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What?
I know. It's this weird thing. I'm like, I don't know why you equate these two things. They're separate. But and then I'll tell you this. The other amazing thing to me was when I first came to the South, because I've been told like the South, hillbillies, backward. Honestly, that's what I was told in England. You go south, they're all racist. No, I'm walking around. I'm like, these are my people. Not that they're fantastic.
Of course they are.
They're loving, they're caring, they bring you in. That they will give you the shirt off their back. They want to know about you. That, there's no prejudice. I don't get in. I have never felt a foreigner in this country ever. And especially when I came to the South, I'm like, what was all these lies that I was told about?
Because it's the most
South?
Christian region in the country. So, of course, the media hate it.
But the funny thing is even though at that point I wasn't far on in my faith, they didn't care. They were generous, warm,
of course,
people. And I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. And then, then I started figuring out about guns, and I'm like, why would I want to be in California? Why can't I? This is a right of mine, and they're infringing on my rights. I'm out. I'm done. I want to go somewhere where, my buddy always says, Tim Clemente always says, when are you going to move to America? That's all he kept saying to me. Why are you in California? When are you going to move to America? And here's the thing. I was like, they're not going to beat me. I did not move here to be beaten out by these people. It's not going to happen. And then you get to a point where you're like, every day I feel like this gloom over my life in California, even though I've got the best friends. Like my community in Pasadena is just the greatest bunch of people. But I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I need to make a difference somewhere else. And I'm like, Dallas.
Did you notice the difference immediately?
100%. Immediately. It was like the last time I went to California. Actually, I drove into Beverly Hills, and I met with Tim actually at Chipotle. It's very glamorous. Chipotle was Chipotle Beverly Hills. So I'm sitting there and I was like, dude, this feels oppressive. Yeah. This feels really oppressive here. Like I don't like it. I feel, when I came first, it felt a lot more alive, a lot more open, and then it just felt just dark. And I don't want to go back again, ever. I'll go and see my friends, but I don't want to go back there at all. And Texas, to me, I mean, people go, oh, well, it's not beautiful like California. I was like, I can always visit California, but what's beautiful about it is freedom and the people. And the people are nice, and they smile, and they say, hello, how was your day? It's just, to me, the essence of what America is. And that's in Dallas. That's not even in,
Were you there for COVID in California?
Oh, yeah.
Do you think the state changed during that time?
I think a lot of people figured out that they couldn't stay there anymore. So one of the catalysts for me moving was my wife, the little kids were in a homeschooling group, and they hadn't done the nativity. They were doing a little nativity play. And so finally they could go out and do the nativity because they couldn't do it inside because everything was locked down. So they did it at the Rose Bowl. And there's a little stage there right near the Aquatic Centre at the Rose Bowl. I kid you not, the police were called on them. It was a group of 5, I think, or 6 families, all with like 6, 7 kids. So it's all families, right? Cops pull up with a bullhorn. You have to disperse. You've got to get out. Blah. And we're all pro-cop, Yeah. When the guys were killed in New York, I went and I took them a bunch of stuff to the PD, and I said, hey, listen, we're behind you, And they were great. They came around, visited my house, and said thank you. But the cops stood over. Of course, all the kids were like, when the cops turn up, and it's meant to, they were like, listen, it's a nativity. We haven't been able to do a nativity. It's March, and we're doing a nativity. We're all families. Don't worry about it. And they're like, oh, well, you have, how many kids are with? I'm like, that's a mom with 7 kids. That's a mom with 5 kids. They're all moms. And they stood over them while they finished the nativity. And I was away, and my wife called me as I got off the plane. She goes, "You're not going to believe what happened today." PD pulled up with 3 cars. I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I don't
Calling the police on a little kid's nativity. Matthew Marsden, I really appreciate your spending this last hour. You always are welcome on this show anytime.
Well, thank you for having me.
I don't think I've met many people who've been able to explain more beautifully why they believe what they believe and why they're doing what they're doing, and you're making me pro-immigration. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Really enjoyed it. Matthew Marsden. Chuck Carl says the name of the show. New episode 3 is a week on Fox Nation.